Hello gamers, I hope you're having a great day and I hope you had a nice new year, and there is something that I want to talk about that concerns me. So back in 2018, there has been nothing but fiasco and bad publicity for AAA game publishers, most notably EA. Of course, Activision Blizzard, Bethesda Game Studios, and 2K Games. Well, actually, for the past couple of years, the game publishers that were mentioned have been always doing something controversial almost every year, leading to the ruining of beloved game franchises and resulting to angry gamers and government intervention. Most of the controversial things that these companies are involved with are mostly have to do with anti-consumer business practices such as loot boxes, which are just glorified slot machines, intrusive microtransactions that psychologically manipulates players to spending more money, false marketing, launching of games that are incomplete, overpriced cookie-cutter DLCs, and how most AAA game publishers are so out of touch with their consumers. With these shady monetization practices being implemented into today's video games, it has led to ruining the gaming experience of most AAA games, causing terrible review scores, distrust from gamers, some games with very poor sales numbers, and even the plummeting of a game company's stock value. So, I got a question. Is this it? Is this the beginning of the crash of the AAA games industry? Or is it already here? Or is this the era where AAA games falls and indie games rise? Let me know what you think down in the comments. It's not about delivering good games anymore, it's more about maximizing profit with little to no effort, exploiting gambling addictions, nickel and diming players, etc, etc. Now, you guys know me, I've been gaming even before I learned how to read, and I've seen the rise and fall of these once beloved game companies that has turned into a corporation that's only concerned with nickel and diming players. Just like any problem, the issue always starts small, and it will grow to be a nuisance one day. I want to tell you my perspective on how I think all of this happened. Again, this is from my point of view of how I witnessed the once beloved game companies fall from grace. Now, let's go back to 2006. The first time I've seen a shady business practice in a video game was back in 2006. In that year, one of the most talked about video games was a game called Elder Scrolls 4: Oblivion. The game was received positively among gamers and critics and became a commercial success, but one day Bethesda released a small downloadable content, aka named DLC. They released a DLC called Horse Armor. That small DLC was probably the first microtransaction I've ever saw. Like I said earlier, the issue started very small. Some gamers were actually enthusiastic about this DLC back in the day, but many other gamers have also expressed their displeasure at the price they had to pay for a minor horse armor cosmetic, and the publisher Bethesda said that they were not going to respond to any customer criticism at the time. Bethesda did eventually release DLC story expansions for Elder Scrolls Oblivion that provided 30 plus more hours of story and gameplay, which is great, but still, that horse armor DLC may have been a contributing factor to the start of bad trends in today's video games. Now let's move to the year 2007. It was a good year for me and for gaming. That year was the release of good games like BioShock, Uncharted 1, Team Fortress 2, Halo 3, Mass Effect 1, and Assassin's Creed. But the most popular game of that year was the original Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. The game received critical acclaim and is praised for its innovative gameplay and its story. The multiplayer was also praised for its addictive FPS gameplay. A year later, Call of Duty 4 has released a DLC called the Variety Map Pack, which introduced new maps for the multiplayer mode. You know, at that time it was alright, not many people didn't mind map pack DLCs, for they actually made the multiplayer feel fresh again. But what I think they did not foresee is that this DLC practice has become quickly outdated, and this practice has actually split player bases from many multiplayer games, including future Call of Duty titles. Moving on to 2011. With the release of Battlefield Bad Company 2 back in 2010, the Battlefield games have become more popular than ever, and with that, millions of FPS fans have bought Battlefield 3. The single player mode wasn't as good as Bad Company's single player, but the multiplayer is where the game shined the most. The game has garnered positive reviews for its replication of full-scale warfare. Soon, they also released Battlefield map packs and online passes, but that is the time when I started to realize, wait, why didn't they just add these maps in the game? I already paid full price for this. Did I buy an incomplete game? Before I knew it, it was the starting trend of cookie cutter DLCs, meaning game companies releasing unfinished products, then selling the missing parts of the game as DLCs, like characters in fighting games, for example. It's not just that. Even before a game's release, some of its contents are blocked via paywall, and the only way to receive the missing content in that certain game is to pre-order or buy online passes, which is just a poor excuse for a gamer to spend more money. To simply put it, they are creating urgency for the player to spend more. At the time, not a lot of players realized that they were being swindled yet, including myself, but in the coming years, more and more gamers are starting to feel that games are becoming too demanding of your money. In 2013, something unexpected happened to one of my favorite horror games, the addition of microtransactions in Dead Space 3. It's bad enough that the game isn't focused on horror anymore, but adding microtransactions to the game is just insulting to the player. Basically, what the microtransactions did in Dead Space 3 is they give you resources so you don't have to grind for items anymore, which is just bonkers. Also, I noticed that the game is almost designed to be grindy in order to make microtransactions more attractive to the player. Despite all that, Dead Space 3 was still an enjoyable game, but those microtransactions were so out of place, and I kept thinking to myself, where the hell did these microtransactions came from? In time, other game companies started to implement microtransactions in their games, and gamers like me started to realize where this practice came from, and we didn't expect it would come from somewhere so small. Let's now jump to 2014, the sudden rise of mobile gaming. Well, at least for me. In 2014, I've noticed a lot of people are starting to own smartphones such as iPhones, Samsungs, and other smart mobile devices. Most of the time, I just see people's eyes glued to their smartphones, playing simple mobile games to pass the time. Kids, adults, and even seniors are just glued to their phones. The first time I noticed this is while waiting for the train, and I looked around me to see a lot of people just using their smartphones, playing games, browsing Facebook and other social media. At the time, I didn't own a smartphone yet, so I don't understand why they are so concentrated on their phones. One day, my mother gave me her old iPhone 4 to replace my old regular cell phone that I only use for texting. So, I decided to download a few games to my iPhone 4, such as Clear Vision 3 and Tons of Guns, if you heard of it. Then, I fucking realized that these games have microtransactions, such as currency packs, boosters, stamina refills, pay-to-win mechanics, and loot boxes, similar to what I saw in Dead Space 3 and other recent multiplayer games at the time. I realized that these mobile game mechanics is what influenced our AAA games today. I thought to myself, this is fucking ridiculous. No one that stupid would actually buy this shit. But turns out there are a lot of people who are stupid enough to actually buy these things, and because of their gambling addictions too. So on that day on, I don't play mobile games and don't support any egregious monetization practices in today's video games. In the same year, South Park actually released an episode named Freemium Isn't Free, which is the 6th episode in the 18th season of South Park. Now, what does South Park have to do with all this? The episode showcases how lucrative mobile games are, and they made jokes about their predatory practices. In that episode, it was very well explained how the mobile gaming industry is exploiting people's addictions and making profits out of it. Here, let me show you a clip.
Allow me to explain the science behind micropay freemium gaming. For years, the concept behind gaming was simple. You pay for the game and you enjoy. With mobile apps, we now have the ability to make games that are boring and stupid. But if you pay for incentives, you're rewarded.
Freemium. The meum is Latin for not really.
It's a simple cycle, a never-ending loop based on RPGs. Explore, collect, spend, improve. But whereas those just use the concept of XP or experience points, we've introduced the idea of micro-paying with money. Money, 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 money.
It's what everyone is doing. Freemium games are what's now, and it's all just a lot of harmless fun.
And so in conclusion, the successful freemium game is based on 5 principles. Entice the player with a simple game loop. Use lots of flashing cha-chings and compliments to make the player feel good about themselves. Train the players to spend your fake currency. Offer the players a way to spend real currency for your fake currency.
So they'll forget they're spending money.
And make the game about waiting. But let the player pay not to wait. It's a surefire way to make lots of money.
We understand micro-paying, but can't the game hidden inside the charade just at least be fun?
No. It has to be just barely fun. If the game was too fun, then there would be no reason to micropay in order to make it more fun.
If you want a more in-depth or a better understanding, I recommend watching episode 6 of season 18 of South Park. Anyway, in short, that episode served as a warning and a PSA to gamers of all platforms, parents, and the casual folk on how mobile gaming industry nickels and dimes its players, but it turns out no one really heeded that warning, and with that, AAA game publishers such as EA, Activision, and 2K Games have adapted scummy mobile gaming monetization practices into their games, such as famous titles like Call of Duty, Overwatch, FIFA games, and NBA games, to name a few. Some mobile gamers have asked the question why PC and console players hate them so much. Well, there's your answer. Mobile gaming mechanics is what caused our beloved AAA gaming franchises to suck so much ass in the past couple of years. I'm not saying all mobile games are bad, but because of the reputation that mobile games have garnered, a lot of gamers like myself have grown a distaste for free mobile gaming apps. In the following years, the trend of releasing unfinished products have started to become rampant and out of control in the gaming industry. MGS5, Destiny, No Man's Sky, Mass Effect Andromeda, and Battlefield 4 are some of the famous examples of games that were launched unfinished. To add insult to injury, some of these games were intentionally released incomplete so that they can sell the rest of the cut content for a price. And some of these games even featured microtransactions as well, which is starting to get very insulting. Microtransactions and loot boxes are commonly found in free mobile gaming apps and free-to-play multiplayer games. Main point is that these games are not free-to-play, and a lot of people will agree with me when I say microtransactions have absolutely no place in a full-priced game. Some gamers like myself concluded that the only way for all of this to stop is to simply not buy these things, but unfortunately, no matter how much you tell these companies that intrusive microtransactions are bad, they will not listen as long as there is a large number of unaware gamers and children that buy these things. Yes, you heard me right, a lot of children actually buy loot boxes and other forms of microtransactions. Don't believe me? Well, here's an article about the number of child gamblers that quadrupled in just 2 years. I'll leave the link in the description. Believe it or not, there are game companies who are very well aware that their audience consists mostly of children. A famous example is Call of Duty. Before Fortnite, a lot of children played a lot of Call of Duty, and Call of Duty games starting from Advanced Warfare have implemented loot box gambling mechanics to their games. Before you knew it, children ages 11 to 16 have suddenly developed an early case of gambling addiction, and irresponsible parents from around the world were surprised to find out on how much money their children spent on virtual items and loot boxes. You may be asking, why do these companies implement such scummy business practices? Well, as I mentioned in my previous videos, to oversimplify it, video games today, especially multiplayer games, tend to die very quickly, and in order for companies to make a quick buck out of it, they implement microtransactions and loot boxes in their multiplayer games. Now let us jump to the year of the loot boxes, the year 2017. Loot boxes have become a staple in almost every multiplayer game there is and a few single-player games. Call of Duty supply drops, Overwatch loot boxes, Rainbow Six Siege alpha packs. Yes, that's the multiplayer game I play a lot, but I still do not support the microtransactions in this game, even if they are just cosmetics only, but I'll explain that in a different video someday. Anyway, battle crates and Ghost Recon Wildlands, loot boxes in Middle-earth Shadow of War, and many more. But what has caused major outrage from gamers around the world is the implementation of loot boxes in Star Wars Battlefront 2. That was the game that finally made gamers say, "That does it, that's the final straw, it's time to stop." Now, I've played the original Battlefront games, and what I have to say about Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017 is that it is absolutely terrible. Not only did this game feature loot boxes that has pay-to-win mechanics, but it also punishes players that don't spend a fuck ton of cash in this game, and they solely designed it to be grindy to make currency packs in the game more attractive to the casual gamer. That is manipulative, that is unethical, and downright unacceptable. If EA Games were to be honest with their consumers, they thought they are going to get away with swindling millions of Star Wars fans around the world with their shady business practices, but little did EA Games know that Star Wars Battlefront 2 have started a chain of events that may put an end to loot boxes. A few months later, Hawaii State Representative Chris Lee stepped up and said Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a Star Wars-themed casino for kids. He also stated, quote, "I've played games my whole life. I've watched firsthand the evolution of the industry from one that seeks to create new things to one that's begun to exploit people, especially children, to maximize profit. Greedy publishers have gotten away with this for so long, and these microtransactions have gotten so out of control that the US government have to intervene." But it doesn't stop there. Belgium's Gaming Commission also stepped in alongside other European countries such as Finland to put a regulation to these monetization practices. 2018, a year later, 15 European gambling committees, Australia and Washington State are now looking into these monetization techniques. And who knows, the companies that release gambling mechanics to their games may face criminal charges. But we'll have to wait and see. But now, since we are in 2018, let's leave the topic of microtransactions for a bit and talk about 2018's AAA game fiascos. One of the most notable fiascos is BlizzCon 2018 with the announcement of Diablo Immortal, and has outraged millions of fans with the shifting of focus to mobile gaming, and the partnership of the Chinese company NetEase, which does not have a good reputation among gamers, for they are known to be the EA Games of China.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any? The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Soon, we see Activision Blizzard's stock plummet down 50%, pulling the plug on Heroes of the Storm, and staff members leaving the company for Activision Blizzard has evolved to a company that only wants a quick, easy buck. Moving on, we have the disastrous launch of Battlefield 5. Before Rainbow Six Siege was my main multiplayer game, I used to be a huge Battlefield fan, and this game suffered from poor sales and was released with many basic features missing from the game. EA Games should have learned from their lesson by now, but nope, they will still launch a game even if it's clearly not ready yet. One of the contributing factors to why Battlefield 5 was a commercial failure began with the announcement trailer depicting a weird, awkward, out-of-place version of World War II. No, it's not because there are women in the game, it's because EA called their players sexists, racists, bigoted, and uneducated. If there's one thing that killed Battlefield 5, it's just EA Games shooting themselves on the foot and the years of distrust gamers have with this company. Well, shortly after, their stocks plummeted down as well. Last but not least is the disastrous Fallout 76. Okay, I'm also a huge Fallout fan myself, but my respect for Bethesda Game Studios has disappeared with Fallout 76. There were way too many issues with the game, like the game launched with a severely broken state, bugs, the glitches that they didn't fix in the previous game, the PC breaking bug that actually deletes your game files, a multiplayer game that didn't even have a simple push-to-talk system, the game being boring with shallow quests, the collector's edition fiasco, the broken ultra-wide fix, the leaking of customer information, the dark rum controversy. Oh man, it just goes on and on. I also want to talk about the overpriced microtransactions in the game for a bit. When you look at Fallout 76's prices for their currency packs, it really says a lot about the company. Like, for example, the 2000 atoms currency pack, which costs 15 quid or $20, and that number of atoms is only good for buying a few cosmetic items. Now, let's compare that to CD Projekt Red's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt DLC prices. The Heart of Stone expansion, which costs $10, provides 10 hours of additional story and gameplay. Now, the next expansion for The Witcher 3 is the Blood and Wine. It has a fair price of $20, since this expansion feels like an entirely different game. Do you see what I mean now? This is why I don't like the excuse, it's just a cosmetic feature anymore. Because companies like Bethesda exploits the player's desire to look good to other players, and they do that by making a virtual cosmetic item extremely expensive. Oh, and since I mentioned The Witcher 3, if you want an example of a good game, just refer to The Witcher 3. The game is complete, no microtransactions, no RNG loot boxes, it's fun, and its DLC expansions are fairly priced, and they treat their customers with the utmost respect. Now let's go back to Bethesda's Fallout 76. After a few weeks, you guessed it, their stocks also plummeted down, but it's not just them. Also Activision Blizzard, EA Games, and tech companies too. And now here I am talking to you about the current state of AAA gaming. It's just sad to see the once beloved game companies evolve into a corporation that only cares for profits and investors. Whenever I watch their press conferences, they're not talking to gamers, but rather their investors. They don't care about gamers anymore, they only care about that money. If these companies are still implementing anti-consumer trends in video games, then it won't be long until the crash of AAA games. A video game crash as a whole won't likely happen because apparently, indie game studios are doing something that AAA games are not. Innovation, fresh ideas, new concepts that haven't been explored before. When AAA games fall, indie games rise, but I'll just have to wait and see what happens. Well, that is my point of view of how I witnessed the fall of once beloved game companies fall from grace from start to finish. But what about you? How did you witness the fall of AAA gaming? Tell me your story down in the comments. Anyway, this is the end of the video. Sorry if this video is too long, but thank you for watching until the very end, and like and subscribe maybe? Let me know if I said anything inaccurate, and as always, I'll see you when I see you. Take care.